Good evening, everyone, and thank you for being here. My name is Matt Wixon. I am an assistant professor of anesthesiology at the University of Michigan. I'm also a founding director of RADAR, Raising Anesthesiology Diversity and Anti-Racism. Thank you so much for being here at our event this evening, where we really want to start talking about what's this application season look like moving forward. The field of anesthesiology is getting increasingly competitive, and we know that not every applicant has access to as many mentors or opportunities or experiences to really put their best application forward. That's where RADAR hopes to step in, and we have four amazing experts with us tonight that are going to share some wisdom and some advice for this upcoming season. I'll introduce them all individually right before they speak. Our format tonight is going to be really, this is a dialogue. We have some prepared questions, themes that came out thanks to all of your fantastic feedback as you registered for the event. And then we'll open it up for a Q&A. Feel free to put questions in the Q&A. I'll be moderating that, asking our content experts that are on tonight. So thank you all for being here tonight. I'd like to start by welcoming Dr. Maya Hammoud. Dr. Hammoud is an OB-GYN here at the University of Michigan, and she has a prominent national role in the area of signaling. Signaling was new to us all this past year. It'll be changing in the field of anesthesiology this coming year. So I'd like to welcome Dr. Hammoud and thank her for being here. Of note, she's joining us on a layover in the airport. So a special thanks for making time to be with us tonight.
Thank you so much, Matt, and thank you for having me here tonight. And as Dr. Wixon mentioned, I will start by disclosing that I'm not an anesthesiologist, and but I am guilty by association because my daughter is an anesthesiologist. She's a resident, second-year resident at Michigan, and I do see many anesthesiologists from the other side of the curtain. So I think I know a little something. So thank you for having me here tonight. I appreciate it. So first, before I talk a little bit about signaling, I think it's really important to talk about a little bit of the match data in anesthesia. So last year, because it is really important to take it into context, there was only one unfilled program in PGY1 position anesthesia, and 74% of the positions in anesthesia were filled by MD seniors. Same for, there was no unfilled programs for PGY2 positions. So it is very competitive, like Dr. Wixon just mentioned. And then again, if you look, there was the one unfilled program had only 3 unfilled positions, and there was no unfilled PGY2 positions. So this is extremely important data to keep in mind as you are thinking about applying this coming season. So anesthesiology is a very competitive specialty as you're thinking about where I'm going to apply, where I'm going to put my signals. So you want to get it right the first time around when you are applying. Also, another thing I want to mention, when you think about what happened this last year with the rank order list length, this also again matched data from the NRMP. It shows you the average ranks per position that program directors have to put per position in order to fill their spots. As you can see, in the last 20 years, program directors had to increasingly have more applicants per position in order to fill. Last year, that number decreased. That was the first time in the last 20 years that number went down. The hypothesis is that number went down because of signaling, because a lot of specialties, this is for all specialties, not just anesthesiology, because a lot of specialties use signals. So what does that mean? That means in generally speaking, program directors are probably interviewing more applicants who signaled them. So signals do mean something. They mean a lot. So it is really important to think about where you're putting your signals. So that's very, very important to think about that. When you look at applicants, that did not change. So you still probably gonna apply and put your signals, but programs are probably going to be more choosy about who they are interviewing. So that's something very, very important to keep in mind. Now let's talk about, this is data from last year. Let's talk about the mean number of signals and the percentage of signals received by programs. So when we look at anesthesiology, the mean number of program was 104 signals per program. The minimum was 14, the maximum was 278. Why do I show you this? This is again last year. The reason I show you this is because oftentimes applicants say, well, how do program directors use signals? I'd like to know that because I'd like to know where to put my signals. Well, it depends because a program, I'm just going to randomly say, let's say I have a program with 20 spots. If I only receive 14 signals, I'm going to have to look at a lot of applicants who didn't signal me. But if I receive 278 signals, then I have the freedom of doing whatever it is that I want. I probably might not look at anyone who did not signal me. Why would I? And again, this shows you the percentage of signals received relative to applications. It goes from 2% to 19%. If 19% of my applications had signals attached to them, think about it. If you're program directors and 19% of your applications have signals attached to them, what is the likelihood you're going to look at the other 80% of applications? I'm not saying they do or don't. Some do, some don't, but I'm just saying, think about what are the odds that you would. So signals do matter. And this is another visualization that shows you number of applicants. So this program that received 278 signals, they receive close to 3,000 applications. If I'm a program that received close to 3,000 applications, do you think I'm going to look at all of them? Think about it. And I can only guess which program that is, probably the top program in the country. I don't know which top program. I can only guess which is the top program in the country. I don't know where Michigan is in that, but so think about those top programs. So a lot of applicants say, well, I deserve to be in the top program in the country. I'm going to give them a signal because I'm special. So think about that. So signals are a really good, it's a rare currency. You want to treat it as such. It's especially when we think we're going to talk a little bit about where you put your gold and your silver signals in a minute, but think about it as a very precious currency and you want to treat it as such. This again shows you what applicants did last year. So this shows you a number and percentage of signals that were sent to 10% of the programs. 21% of signals went to top 10% of programs. So applicants did actually send a lot of signals to the same programs. We all want to do better this year. We all want to send our signals more equally amongst programs. You don't all want to send them to the same place. I often think about if you ever watch little kids all play in soccer, they all go after the ball all together. That's not how we want to play. We want to send them more all equally. So that's what you want to think about when you're actually placing your signals. This is a really important slide. And this slide looks at the data from last year again about geographic preference and signaling. I'm going to spend a little bit of time on this because this is really important as you think about where you do geographic preference and signaling. First of all, I just want to tell you that signaling, that you can choose to use signals, you can choose to do geographic preference. I highly recommend you do use your signals, even though it's presented as optional. It's probably not wise not to signal. You really should opt into signaling. I'm going to start on the right side of the slide here, which shows you that. So also the geographic preference, you have the option of choosing up to 3 census regions of geographic preferencing. And it's a little bit complex to go into all those details, but you probably want to look carefully at what that means before you choose those. But what this slide shows you, if your geographic preference is aligned with the program you signal, the applicant has 61% chance of, on average, of receiving an interview from that program. If you choose no geographic preference and you place a signaling on the program, that drops to 40%. If your geographic preference is not aligned, it drops to 28%. I know this is confusing, so I'm going to give you an example. Let's say that you decide to give Michigan a signal, but your geographic preferences are on the West Coast. The chance that you would get an interview from Michigan would be 28%. If you actually give a signal to Michigan, but your geographic preferences happen to include the Midwest region, then that goes to 61%. That's why those geographic preferences become really important. So you really want to think about geographic preference. If you put no geographic preferences, then it becomes 40%. So it is really important that you think about how do you align those geographic preferences with the program signaling. And while it seems like saying no geographic preference is a safe bet, it does drop your odds. So you really want to work with your advisors if that is something that you're going to choose. And it's for some of you, that might be the right choice, depending on how competitive of an applicant you are and where you are choosing around the country, or whether you are couples matching, for example. That might be the right choice for you. So you do want to think about that. So this just summarizes that sending a program signal substantially improves the likelihood you're receiving a review offer, and that is stronger if it aligns with geographic preference. This year, anesthesiology, last year they only gave five signals. This year, you're going to get 5 gold and 10 silver. What does that mean? 5 gold is the highest interest, and 10 silver signal is very high interest. One question that applicants are going to say, does that mean I only apply to 15 programs? I'm not going to tell you what that means because nobody knows. Nobody could tell you. But most likely, most programs are probably going to look a lot at the signaling. How much they look beyond that, I don't know. This is the OBGYN data from last year that shows you that a person who did not signal had less than 5% chance of receiving an interview. OBGYN did not have geographic preferences last year, so we don't know what that looks like. But essentially, I'm guessing, and anesthesia was, even with 5 signals last year, I can tell you that they pretty much did not look at people who did not signal them. So I'm guessing this year that if you don't signal, your likelihood of getting a view is extremely, extremely low. I'm guessing, my educated guess. This is for more information about the ERAS, because a lot of changes. Obviously, you'll have the slides. You can look at that. And I think my time is up. Please follow me on Twitter. I do tweet a lot about things that are happening and about changes, and I will be here for the Q&A at the end. Thank you very much.
Dr. Hammoud, thank you. Signaling is brand new to our field and incredibly confusing. So thanks for walking us through that. I'd encourage all participants, if you have a question, put it in the Q&A whenever it pops to mind. As I said, I'll be moderating that towards the end. Next, I'd like to welcome Dr. Jed Wolpaw. He's the program director at Johns Hopkins. And Dr. Wolpaw, my question for you from our participants tonight is, what's in a personal statement? How should they be thinking about a personal statement? What stories should they or should they not tell as our applications change and there's less and less data within an anesthesiology application?
Thanks, Matt. Appreciate the question and being here, and thank you to all the participants for being here this evening. It's a pleasure to be here. I want to just make one comment about signaling real quick, and then I'll talk about the personal statement, and that is that there are 2 really fantastic anesthesiologists who have been doing a lot of work with signaling in our specialty, Andrea Dutoit and Emily Teeter, and I recorded a podcast with them on signaling that is going to be released next week. So stay tuned if you want to hear what they have described. It very much lines up with what Dr. Hammoud just said. But if you want specifics on what we as a specialty are recommending to medical students in terms of thinking about how to use your signals, which is, again, very much in line with what we just heard, that is all going to be available for free on ACRAC next week. So you can check it out at acrac.com. It'll be released probably Monday. Okay, so let me address the personal statement. And I'll say first off the top that I'm going to give you kind of my collected wisdom from the past 7 years of being a program director, but different PDs, those on the call may have other thoughts, and please feel free to tell me if you disagree, any of you other panelists. So the way I tell my students to think about it is this: the personal statement should be your story. It is a story about you, and it is your chance to really tell us what you think is important about you in a way that will probably get read a little more carefully than your list of 10 activities, which may also say something about you, but this is really your chance to highlight what you want to highlight. Now, there's a couple of just logistical things I would say to keep in mind. First, it should be less than a page. 12-point type, less than a page. It is, I remember back before I ever had to give any real talks, I thought that a 15-minute talk would be easier than a 30-minute talk, would be easier than an hour-long talk. But it turns out that that's the opposite. It's much easier to give an hour-long talk because you can just say everything. And if you have to cut that talk down to 15 minutes, that's incredibly hard. So I get why it's much easier to try to put everything in your personal statement, but I encourage you not to do that. You are welcome to kind of do a data dump and have a lot of stuff, but then you really need to sift through it and spend some real time editing it down so that it's less than a page and it tells the story about you. It's going to mean getting rid of some stuff that you might want to highlight, maybe stuff about you did in undergrad, but I would say that's probably less important than what you have done in medical school. And you don't need to list everything. It's going to be this other stuff, right, that's on your CV is going to be findable. What this should be is a story about you. So make it less than a page and don't shrink the type to make it fit in pages. Be 12-point type, less than 1 page. Grammar and spelling is really key. You should not upload this personal statement to ERAS until you have read it and checked it and had at least 2 other people go through it for you for content for sure, but also for grammar and spelling. It is, and I think others would agree, it is a huge problem. And I would say a red flag if there are grammatical and spelling errors in a personal statement, not because you need to be perfect at grammar and spelling, but because it suggests you did not spend the time to have it looked at and make sure you identified those problems. And so that's really key. I would say that a typical format, and there is no required format, but a typical format is going to start with some kind of story. It could be a story about a patient, a case. It does not have to be. I would say don't pick a case just because you feel you have to do that. If there was a case that really touched you and got you interested in anesthesiology and you want to talk about that case, I think that's fine. It can also just be a story about you. In fact, I would say if you have a compelling story about yourself, that's probably even better because we would rather know about you than about a random case. But it's okay to use a case, but usually people will start with something like that. And then they will talk about how that story connects to anesthesiology. But be careful not to spend a huge amount of time talking about what anesthesiology is. We don't need you to tell us anesthesiology is such and such and such, right? We know what anesthesiology, we're all anesthesiologists. So you can say that this story led me to anesthesia in this way, and it connects to anesthesia in this way, but you don't need to give the background. And this is where you can save some space. You don't need to start giving us a lot of details about what anesthesiology is or what an anesthesiologist does. But talk about how it connects, talk about your strengths. Why would a program want to take you? Is it that you are someone who has some really compelling life experiences? Talk about those. Is it because you've really excelled in your ability to learn and perform well in school and in your rotations? And you can mention that, but talk about what your strengths are. And you can talk about what you're looking for in a program. The whole thing should really read like a story. So you wouldn't want, for example, to talk about your research you've done in cardiac anesthesiology and then in your final paragraph say, I don't really know what I want to do, but I'll figure it out. Or, I might want to do cardiac, or I might want to do OB, or I might want to do peds, or I might want to go to private practice. That might be true. And it's fine if it's true, but it's a less compelling story than talking about your cardiac anesthesia research and then talking about a great cardiac anesthesia case you're involved in, a mentor in cardiac anesthesiology, and then saying, I look forward to finding a program that will help me become the best cardiac anesthesiologist I can be. No one will hold you to that. No one will come to you when you're a CA3 and applying in peds and say, wait a minute, you said here 4 years ago that you wanted to do cardiac. Right? That's not going to happen. So just try to make it all fit in a compact story that flows from one thing to the next. And then you can say, what you're hoping to do. Are you hoping to do this fellowship or, be in this area or whatever it is? I think it is worthwhile. And you don't have to do this, it's certainly not required, but to have a final paragraph that is specific to the program you're applying to. I do not think you need to do this for 50 programs, and I hope you don't apply to 50 programs, but I think for the 15 programs that you're going to signal, I would do this. And I say that because a lot of people do it. And if you don't do it, then it may hurt you. So I would take the time, and it's not that much time, but I would take the time to have a final paragraph that says, I'll stick with Dr. Hamoud's use of the University of Michigan that says, I really am excited about training at the University of Michigan Department of Anesthesiology because da, 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 da. And if you say, because I love Michigan or something like that, that's probably not great. Now, if you have family in Ann Arbor or something like that, that would be totally reasonable to say if there's a really compelling reason you want to be in that location. But also I would say some things about that program. You should have done your homework. You should have gone on their website and learned as much as you can about this program and then put some of those things in. The more specific it is to their program, the more compelling that's going to be for them to say, you know, not only did this person signal us, but look, they really did their research. They know stuff about our program. That's impressive. So I would recommend that you do that, though not everybody does. Some do nots. Don't try to be funny. I don't think anyone has ever been helped by a joke in their personal statement, but many people have been hurt. So just, it's not worth it. Even if you're a wonderful, humorous person, that's great. We'll see that in you when you interview, or by the virtue of the fact that you've been a stand-up comedian or whatever. Don't do it in your personal statement. And then again, as I said, I would not save some time by not talking about what anesthesia is. The last thing I'll say is, if there are red flags in your application, let's say that you have a particularly low step 2 score. Let's say that you have a misdemeanor conviction. Let's say that you failed a course, either in the first 2 years of med school, a classroom course, or you did poorly in a or had to repeat a clerkship or something like that. I would absolutely recommend that you address that, because we will see it. And if it's not addressed, it feels like, okay, either they were hoping we wouldn't see it, or it's worse than it actually is, or whatever. I'll just give you the obvious example of, there are states where if you get a speeding ticket, that is a misdemeanor, right? So some states it is, some states it isn't. And if all it says in there is, have you ever had a misdemeanor? Yes. Well, I mean, that could be anything, right? But if you say, here's the situation, I was, driving 10 miles per hour over the speed limit, I got his ticket, I did whatever it was I had to do. I've never, had that happen again. I know the importance of safe driving, right? That is much better. Same thing, if you had a family member who was sick or something and you just couldn't focus on school and you did poorly in a class, I mean, I think we all understand that, but it's helpful to know that rather than just seeing this on your transcript that you didn't do well. So that, in a nutshell, those are my recommendations. And again, I would be completely open to anyone on the call saying that they totally disagree or would want to add anything. Thanks so much.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Wolpe. I wholeheartedly endorse everything that you said and appreciate your wisdom. Next, I'd like to introduce Dr. Allison Mitchell. She's the program director at Washington University in St. Louis. And my question for you is about, it's a two-part question. One is, how should we be thinking about audition or away rotations? And secondarily to that, can you talk a little bit about international medical graduates in the field of anesthesiology?
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Matt. Hi, everyone. As Dr. Wixon said, my name is Allison Mitchell, and I'm the program director at Washington University in St. Louis. I'm really excited to be here and happy to answer this question. So this is a kind of a challenging question to answer, because there's lots of different answers based on your individual story. But I would say that one of the really one of the important things to remember is that our international medical graduates made up a very small percentage of the match students in anesthesiology. And so I think there are a couple of things that tend to lead to success in this case. So one is the majority of students that match from an international medical school have some sort of personal connection to the department that they end up matching at. So whether that's having a job as a getting involved in research within that department, forming a connection with a department member, I think those things can really go a long way, because then you have a track record and you form a relationship with that department. And I think that helps with getting to know them getting to know you, and helping put your foot in the door. Things that that we kind of look out for or look at in international medical graduates is we look at the same application that we do for everybody. So kind of that holistic review. I think one of the things that we tend to look at is, the number of years between, are there gaps in your training? And so what were you doing between the gaps? So the same way as on a job resume or a job interview, you are asked to explain gaps in your resume. If there are gaps in your training and versus what you're doing now, I think those would be really important to address, especially as I really like to see continuity in clinical experience from when you graduated from school to when your current state, because I think that it kind of leads to a smoother transition and like really successful residents. And that was one part of the question, right? Dr. Wixon, what was the second part?
Absolutely. I was just thinking about, as international medical graduates, I know you have some IMGs within your program. Could you tell a story of how did that happen? What does that look like? I think it can feel like there are barriers.
Yeah, and certainly, I think we've had several. So one was a who got involved in research in one of our departments, used that opportunity to meet a lot of different faculty members, took the opportunity to shadow, kind of met with different department members, really worked on strengthening weak points in any perceived weak points in your application. So for example, if you had struggled with test taking, but then, successfully took step 3, I think shows that you have the ability to, continue improving over time. I think this is less related to that specific story I'm telling, but kind of addressing weak points. And so meeting with faculty members while an international medical graduate working in our department was able to kind of address those weak points in their application, come up with solutions. We're able to get clinical experience working, shadowing people in the department, and from there kind of applied. And honestly, I don't know that they had I think people ask like, oh, does the program director help you find a job within research within the department? And I would say that most of the time it's not as if I have never found one of my international my now residents, but medical students, I have not personally found them a position. They have found those positions on their own. And then when I saw their application across my desk, I had several faculty members reach out about how much they enjoyed working with this person. These are the strengths that they saw when they were working with them. And that really led to us, taking a really close look at their stellar application. And so we've had success that way. I know can sometimes be difficult to get in a department, but I think looking at kind of like the research arena and where there are some needs that could be filled there can be a really great way to find that niche in.
Great. And should students think of away rotations all as audition rotations, or does it depend on the department at which they're rotating? And how can they
Yeah.
ask that question?
I would, I think it's important that if you are at an away rotation and you are planning on applying, that you should consider it auditioning, and you should put your best foot forward at all times. I would not assume that you are going to get an interview just because you did an away rotation at a location. That's not a given. So this is your opportunity to really live out your application and really sell your story, and really allow the department to get to know you and you to get to know the department. It's equally informative for you to learn about the department, the culture there, the residents, all of those things. And so I would say it's really important to consider it in an audition rotation. I also would say that it starts when you start interacting with the staff. If I hear from my coordinators that this person blew them off or was very rude to them because they didn't have an MD in their title, that makes me think a whole lot more about this person, and not in a positive way if you are rude to people that you perceive not having power, versus how you treat people with power. So I think it's important to treat everyone well and to put your best foot forward while on the audition rotation and while interacting with anybody at that hospital. I think it's also a really great opportunity on these away rotations to network within the department. So get to know different people that are there. You'll get to work with different faculty members. We have students that are like, who should I get to meet while I'm here? And so get to meet the people that are suggested to you most of the time. And, if you do an away rotation, I am totally happy to meet with you, and generally meet with most of our away rotators, because they're great people to ask questions to. Sometimes you may not have the same level or case experience, level of mentorship at your home institution. And so frequently, getting to talk to different faculty members at your away rotation can really give you some exposure into the field, some advice about how to apply strategically, and where your strengths lie. So I think using all of the resources that come with an away rotation is really important. My other advice is to just know a little bit about the department. It's not, you don't have to know, please don't go and memorize a face sheet of all the faculty members and residents. But it is nice to know that you've looked at our website, you know, kind of some of the things we're interested in, what are our mission goals for our department. And on that away rotation, you can really show how you align with those mission goals and how you would be an asset there. And so I think those things can really help you shine. That was a rambling answer. Sorry.
No, it's sage advice. We really appreciate it. Thank you. Next, I'll turn it over to Dr. Peoples, who is the program director here at the University of Michigan. My question for you, Dr. Peoples, is about research. Is it important? Does it have to be within the field of anesthesiology? What are your thoughts on that? How do you think about research?
This is a really common question. This came up a lot as a really common topic also in the submitted questions. And locally, we spent a lot of time discussing this with our medical students as well. I think it's so most common answer to medicine, it depends. It depends somewhat on the program that you're talking about in the institution and what the focus of that program is and what they're looking for. So it's really important to do research to find out as an applicant what the institutions that you're applying to are looking for, and kind of what the goals of their training are. For academic institutions, research is going to be a focus. One of the big focuses of what they're training their residents for and what the goals are as far as advancing the specialty. And there may be other programs where that's not as big of a focus if they're more, the focus is more on training community anesthesiologists. Not to say that research doesn't happen at those places. With regard to applications, research for our institutions, for instance, it's not required for sure. When we see research listed, we want to make sure that people are very specific about what their role is in the research. When they come for interview, we're going to generally be asking questions about the research, and we want to make sure that they're able to speak specifically to talk about what the hypothesis of their project was, what their role was, and be able to speak to that. When we have applicants who come and we want to discuss about the research and they're not able to speak in a way that leads us to believe that their involvement matches what they listed on their application, then that raises a concern. So just make sure that you're very specific about your role and are able to speak about your involvement when you come to interview. Research does not have to be within anesthesiology. There's plenty of folks who have research opportunities early on in medical school that are not within anesthesia because they didn't know that that's what they wanted to do. But you're still gaining skills from that. And again, it's important to be able to talk about those projects and what you learned and how that could translate if you have future interests in pursuing research for anesthesia. And certainly research is not required. There's many other ways that people can become well-rounded applicants and develop skills that are going to contribute to their growth as physicians through other work in medical education, health equity, administrative leadership roles, patient safety, quality improvement. Those are all aspects of anesthesiology that are really important and ways that you can become a well-rounded applicant outside of pursuing research. I'm just scanning the questions here to see if there's other things that I haven't touched on.
There's a question about research before medical school.
Oh, yes.
What do you do with that?
As far as putting it on the application?
Yeah, is it worthwhile to put on an application? Is it not? Does it depend?
It depends. So now applicants are going to be limited to a certain number of experiences, where before it was completely open and you could put as many experiences in your application as you wanted to, but now it's limited. So that would have to be an experience that was so important that it overshadows other things that you did during your medical school time. I've certainly seen research listed for people who have had who pursued other careers or had other sorts of experiences before medical school that were a really big part of their development and their path to medical school. And so we've seen those and been able to discuss those and how they contribute to their application. But I would say it sort of depends. If it's going to be something from before medical school, it'd have to be a really significant experience, not sort of a routine experience that you might have an undergraduate or like an introductory type experience.
Great, fantastic. Well, thank you all four of you for answering my prepared questions. We have a really robust Q&A. I would encourage all our attendants, please put questions in. I think we've answered 18 already, which is remarkable as we've been talking here. One question I'd like to ask the panel, though, is someone asked, what about dual applying to anesthesiology in another specialty? Thoughts on that? They're feeling torn between two wonderful fields and can see themselves doing either. What advice would you give in that scenario?
I'm happy to say, I mean, very quickly, I think it's fine. I don't personally think there's anything wrong with applying in two or more, however many fields you want. We wouldn't know unless either you said it, which you don't have to, or I guess if you were applying at the same place for two different programs, we might hear about it from the program director for the other thing. But, you know, I think I speak for most of us when I say I don't think anybody would hold it against you, right? We would want to know what your interest in anesthesiology is. And if you are a good enough applicant to qualify for an interview, we would interview you. And, you know, if we like you, we'd rank you. And it, you know, doesn't really matter to us whether you in the end rank us or not, right? So I think you at some point have to make that decision. You'd make your own life a lot easier probably if you just decided before, but if you can't and you want to apply in two things and maybe interviews will help you decide, I think that's fine.
I agree with Jed. My only caveat is that you should also just try to make sure that your application materials that you upload to ERAS support the specialty that you're applying to. I don't really want to read a recommendation letter about how you should be another type of physician. Because that doesn't, if we don't know about it, we don't know, but you should make sure that your materials align correctly, so that your letters of recommendation are for anesthesiology, that it doesn't say like, oh, they're applying to like anesthesiology and this other program. The caveat there being that like, we understand that some people are applying for advanced positions, and so you're applying for a PGY 1 year somewhere. But I think just making sure that you're a little, you know, that your personal statement actually says that I would like to be an anesthesiologist, not like I want to be a anesthesiologist and or this. So you can be split, but I would keep that splitness more out of your application, and more in your personal.
It's sort of related to dual applying and also the research question, because I just thought of some other scenarios we've seen. If you've done a lot of research within a specific field and then that's not anesthesia and apply to anesthesia, you may get questions in your interview about that. So just be prepared to be able to discuss in detail about those experiences in your transition. And also for dual applying, sometimes that might be a wise decision for parallel planning, depending on the competitiveness of the specialties that you're entertaining.
Fantastic. My next question is about signals. Not surprising, there's lots of great questions about signals. First, our program director is going to look at a gold signal and a silver signal differently. And also are signals utilized in making a rank list?
I actually tried to answer those questions in here. So the data does tell us that they do look at the gold and silver differently. So an applicant has a much higher likelihood of receiving an interview based on the gold than the silver, based on the data, the OB-GYN data, which was the only specialty that used the two-tier signaling. And then for the rank order list, most specialties, when they actually when they advise the program directors, they tell them not to use them in their final rank order list. But I would tell you, I think consciously or unconsciously, I think they are. I mean, the rank order list data that I just showed you from the match tells me that they are. So
Yeah.
I think even though they say they aren't, I think that they are.
Yeah, I think some are. I will say, in all honesty, we did not last year, and we didn't pay attention to who signaled us or who did not once we were done with interviews. But I think some may. I mean, I think you have to assume that. And about the I would say 100% a gold signal is different than a silver signal, right? I would anticipate that most programs will probably start by looking at everyone who gave them a gold signal, and they will fill as many of their interview spots as they can with people who gave them gold signals who they really want to interview. That might be it, right? There are some programs who will stop there because they will fill all their interview spots. And then many programs will then go on to the silvers and fill the rest of their interview spots with silver signals. But no question, you have a better shot at an interview with a gold.
Yeah, I think based on your anesthesiology data from last year, you're all just based on 5 signals. You actually were pretty tight giving interviews for people who signaled you as a specialty. So my guess is that the gold is going to mean a lot again compared to the silver in the anesthesiology specialty, because you're given 5, which is the same number of signals you gave last year altogether.
Fantastic. A lot of questions coming in about letters of recommendation. Is it okay if they're from non-anesthesiologists? Can they be from research mentors if they haven't worked with you clinically in the operating room? Should they all be from anesthesiologists? Would appreciate the PD's perspective on that.
I think we typed some answers into the chat, but I would say, you should have some letters from an anesthesiologist, at least one. I think Dr. Wolpaw suggests 2. I kind of like having a letter from somebody outside the specialty, because I feel like I want to see that you can work hard when you're not doing something that you potentially want to do for the rest of your life. So I think it shows a little bit something different about you. But I think you want strong letters. So if it's someone who knows you well and kind of saw you shine in a situation, and that person is a pediatrician or a surgeon, I think get a letter from them if it's, but at least 1 to 2 should be from an anesthesiologist.
Yeah, the advice I give our students is, and again, as you just heard, it can vary. So what I say is not necessarily the gold standard, but I would just say, I tell them you should, my advice is have 4 letters. I know you only have to have 3, but I think for the most part, it's better to have 4. And then I tell them you should have ideally 1 that's a department letter from your home department. If you don't have a home department, you get it, that's fine. But if you have one, I think that's ideal. Some people call it a chair's letter or a department letter. You don't have to have it, but I think if you can, I think it's reasonable. And then a second one from an individual anesthesiologist. A third that's clinical, but from something else. So internal medicine is a very common one, especially if you're going to be applying for internal medicine prelim programs. And then a fourth is kind of a grab bag. If you did a lot of research, it could be a research mentor. If you didn't and you just wanted to be another clinical letter, maybe something from surgery or somewhere else where you think you could get a really good letter, I would prioritize it being a good letter over worrying about where it's from. Or it could be from a close mentor, or if you did, let's say you spent a lot of time volunteering in a free clinic, it could be from the director of that free clinic, but something that rounds things out a little bit, I think is nice. If you don't have a great letter like that and you want to go with 4 clinical letters, I think that's fine.
Fantastic. Dr. Peoples, I'll direct this next question to you first around etiquette regarding reaching out to programs after you applied. To show
The communication. Oh, after you applied?
You've applied, after you've interviewed, what is the right etiquette around, peri-interview communication with program directors, program coordinators?
I think in the new era going forward with the number of signals that we have, I think it's less likely that reaching out to programs is going to be effective as a means of securing an application. There might be some special situations where that may not hold true. But I can say from personal experience that, applicants reaching out to us rarely results in an interview invitation. It may be, different depending on the program, but for the most part, we've reviewed applications, we have our criteria, and And especially now with the number of signals we have, that is reaching out to the program already. Gold signals is emailing us many times, and silver is, still showing strong interest. So I think, essentially, if you're signaling us, you've already reached out to us, and we're not likely to extend interviews based on those communications.
Fantastic. Dr. Wolpaw, Dr. Mitchell, any additional thoughts on that?
Allison, anything you want to say? You're muted.
Muted. Yeah, I know. I don't know how after 4 years of Zoom, I still can't unmute myself. Yeah, I agree. We get lots of emails. I have, if you really feel like you have a signal that you want, again, I wouldn't be aggressive about your emailing. It's really off-putting to have to email me every single day or every week, or email every person that's in my department, or to find and stalk my coordinator on LinkedIn and then like contact them to contact me. So some of those things will kind of not be perceived well. So I think, like Dr. People said, using the signaling is good. I don't know that emailing us is going to get you an interview. If you really have something that is super compelling or a big life change, or you have there's a person you worked with in our department that's really good that you would like to I would use a conduit if you have to email. And again, I would not necessarily do that after ERAS is opened and interviews are going out. This is more kind of pre-application season, just because there's going to be a lot of emails going, and I don't know it's going to change your ability to get an interview.
I will also add that do not email a program director and say, hey, give me an interview, I'm interested in your program, and you had not given them a signal, because it just does not make sense.
That was what I was going to say. So this past year, it was a little harder. There were only 5. I'm sure we all got a lot of the letters saying, you're one of my top programs and I didn't get an interview, and it was like, well, okay, I guess I could have been your 6th, right? This year, I'm going to know I wasn't in your top 15. So it's really going to be hard to believe that you're saying I'm one of your top programs. Now, I will say, and we said this on the podcast, that if something major changes, let's just, for example, let's say that you didn't know it was going to happen and all of a sudden your parents moved to Baltimore, right? Like after your application was in and after signals were done. Then I think it is reasonable to write me and to say, this is what happened. Be very clear, right? Don't just say you're one of my top programs now, but say my parents moved to Baltimore and it's really important to me to be with them. And the reason I didn't signal you was because they used to live in California, right? So then that's the kind of thing that I think would be very valuable to send a letter about.
Great advice. Next question I have, what's your best advice on preparing for interviews? How can students use these coming months to, show up fully the way they'd like to in their interviews?
I think you're doing part of it already, which is getting your application together. So there's nothing more off-putting than me asking you about something that you wrote in your application and then you have nothing to say about it. I think being engaged, being really knowing your stuff, if you have a research project on your CV or your application, be prepared to talk about it, and longer than the sentence, like the abstract sentence that's in there. Like it's nice to feel like you were engaged in your projects, that you're passionate about things. So talk about the things that make you excited, that really got you going when you were getting your application together. If that was a global health trip, if that was a research project where you learned you didn't like research, just be prepared to talk about what you put in your application, because that's what I have to go off of to start a conversation with you. And so make sure you know your application, know what you're excited about. And I think those things will really shine through in your interview, as well as kind of where you want to go. Like Dr. Wolpaw said earlier, we don't know where you're going to end up. You may not know where you're going to end up, but having a destination that you're driving in and not just kind of circling a parking lot really makes me think you've thought about the specialty, thought about your career. And so really thinking about, like, where are you going to take your career? Like, what is going to be after residency for you? Again, we don't, there's no crystal, we don't make you sign a contract when you said like, actually, I really don't actually want to be an OB anesthesiologist. I'd changed my mind. We will never know. But having that to talk about is I think a really good preparation for your interview, is knowing what you're going to do or what you would like to do after residency.
I would add that, like anything, practice. So especially if you may be the most wonderful person in the world, but you know that in a new, uncomfortable, nerve-wracking situation, especially one that is over Zoom, you may be a little awkward or a little stiff or, whatever. Practice, get on Zoom if you can find faculty willing to do it, that's great. If not, you can do it with your friends. All of us, I bet, I know I did it. I bet everyone here did. For oral boards, we sat on the phone with our friends and gave each other oral board stems over and over and over and over. Do that with interviews. Get on Zoom, time it, ask tough questions. Don't smile, right? Try to grill your friend, make it uncomfortable for them, and just practice. You can practice in front of the mirror too, but you want to work on being personable, being comfortable. The more you practice, the more potentially comfortable you'll be able to be.
Fantastic. We have a question here about, are interviews going to be virtual or are they going to be in person? Dr. Wolpa, I think you have some breaking news.
Yeah, so we just released, and by we, I mean the Program Director Association for Anesthesiology just released guidance encouraging and recommending that all programs do virtual interviews only. I will say that we have no enforcement power, so we can recommend that, but we cannot force programs to do that. And I know for sure there are some programs that are already planning on doing some in-person or even all in-person, some hybrid. We've specifically recommended against hybrid because then you have some people in person and some virtual, and that clearly creates the potential for bias. So we are very opposed to that, but again, we can't control it. I think most programs will stick to all virtual. And then you may know that the NRMP is considering a change that would allow programs to lock their rank list early before applicants have to send theirs in. And if that happens, we have recommended that then programs can consider having an in-person revisit if and only if they formally lock their rank list. And just so you all know, that lock is permanent and irreversible. I mean, assuming the NRMP makes this change, that lock would be permanent and irreversible. And so the program you'd be able to go on the NRMP site and see, I'm just going to use myself as an example. Hopkins has locked their rank list. It is locked. And then you will know that coming or not coming to our second look is totally optional and cannot possibly affect your spot on our rank list because we can't change it. Even if you came and burned the hospital down, we couldn't change where we ranked you on the rank list, right? So you would know it was totally risk-free and you would not need to spend money or anything unless you really felt like it was for you and worthwhile for you. So if that change happens, I think it'll be great. And you'll see a lot of in-person interviews. In-person revisit weekends or revisit events. If that does not happen, our recommendation is then that revisits also be virtual to avoid pressure on you to have to fly somewhere and do a revisit.
Fantastic. A question here about the interview itself. Two-part question. What can our applicants expect? Will they be more questions about clinical knowledge, or are they going to ask about the person and the applicant themselves? And the second part of that is, any advice if you want to talk about something that may be seen as political? The example given here was gender-affirming care. Is that an okay thing to do? Is it not? What would you recommend in those scenarios?
So I'll just say my advice, which may not be the right advice for everyone, is if it's important to you, you should talk about it, because you probably don't want to go to a program that would not want you if you talked about that, right? So you would want people to know that this is important to you and it's something you put time into, and that will select for you programs that find that attractive and will select out programs that do not. And that's a good thing, I think.
Matt, can you repeat the first part of the question too?
What's the interview look like? Are they questions that are about the applicant themselves, or are you going to ask?
Right. That's a good question. Yeah, I mean, and I can't speak for every program, but it's not like a pop quiz about anesthesiology. It's not oral boards. We're not asking you about specific clinical decisions. Most of the time we're asking about kind of bigger concept things like your life, your goals, what motivates you. I can't, and again, that's probably highly specific for every program. If they ask kind of clinical questions versus more about you and your application, which I don't know if Dr. Wolpaw or Dr. Peoples has a different opinion.
Peoples. I've been talking a lot.
Sorry, I've been answering a bunch of the questions and focused on that. And typing away.
I think the question was just, Matt, where it was about what the interview looks like, what kind of
What's the
questions.
interview look like? Yeah.
For our interview, we have a mix of residents and faculty. We use behavior-based interviewing. So as far as preparing, that's something that you could expect to see in probably many different programs. We have time to interact with residents in order to kind of get a feel for things. So a big thing with virtual interviewing is always trying for the programs to try to convey the culture and be able to give applicants a sense for what it's like to be there. So that's something that we're definitely sensitive to and trying to meet the needs of what the applicants are looking for that way as well. I think many programs also provide some background information, although you should do your research in looking at program websites to make sure that you're able to answer questions that have, the information listed there already. But many do also provide some more background as part of the interview day as well.
Well, fantastic. Our hour is actually up. It's amazing how quickly this went. I want to say a thank you to all of our amazing panelists. Your knowledge, expertise, and care for our specialty is so appreciated. This is one of the goals of RADAR. It's increasing the pathways to academic anesthesiology for our future physicians. So thanks so much for sharing your knowledge. I'd like to close tonight. I'd like to ask our panelists, if you had one piece of advice that you could give for this upcoming cycle to applicants, what is it? And I'll start with you, Dr. Hamoud.
Enjoy the process, use your signals wisely.
Wonderful. Dr. Wolpaw.
Yeah, that's a great one. And I think probably the most important one this year. But I think what I would say is this is an incredibly nerve-wracking process. It can be very stressful. And I remember personally feeling, and I've seen lots of med students go through, feeling like it is the be all end all. And I know it feels like it's hard to believe what I'm about to say, but it isn't. I matched in emergency medicine originally. That's what I thought I was going to do. And I changed my mind and I switched, right? And you may think right now that anesthesiology is what you want to do, and you may be right, or, you may not. And that may mean you match in anesthesiology and you decide to switch, or it may be that you actually don't match and you end up doing a prelim year and then you decide to do something different, or you dual apply and you end up in something different. And, what I have found is that things have a way of working themselves out. And I think that if you think that this match coming up is the end of the world if it doesn't go your way, then you're going to, first of all, feel incredibly stressed right now and then be incredibly upset if it doesn't go your way. So I would say do the best you can. If you can enjoy it, as Dr. Hamoud said, great, enjoy it. But at the very least, don't let it drive you crazy, and know that you will be able to have a fulfilling career. It will work out. If it's in anesthesiology, that's great. If it's in something else, I bet it'll still be great. So do the best you can, but don't think it's the end of the world if it doesn't work exactly the way you envision it right now.
Wise words. Dr. Peoples.
I think just to be your authentic self. You want to make sure that you find the program that meets your needs. And the program, is a good fit for you. So if you're portraying your authentic self, hopefully you'll get a good match that way, and be happy and successful.
Wonderful. Dr. Mitchell.
Oh, now I have to follow up all this wise and sage advice. I completely agree with all my fellow panelists. And the other thing is, you're putting in the work now. So do your preparation, start working on your personal statement, letters of recommendation. Make sure you ask people well in advance of when the letters are due. And if you do the preparation, the work, the result will end up. And, you know, if you can gather as much knowledge and advice that you can. So talking to different people, talking to attending things like this, you know, really picking people's brains, you know, sets you up for preparation is key. So that would be my, I guess, if I had to sum it all up, prepare and strategize. And so that means picking people's brains. And I know you will all be successful. So we're happy to help.
Wonderful. Well, thank you all again for being here tonight and for your words. This recording will be available on the RADAR website. And everyone have a safe and healthy night. Take care.